You're about to pay more for petrol, and it has nothing to do with oil prices. A hidden political decision in Downing Street could add hundreds of pounds to your yearly fuel bill, and it might happen sooner than you think. Most people believe fuel prices rise and fall because of oil markets, wars, or greedy corporations. But here in the UK, the single biggest reason petrol hasn't gone through the roof in the past decade is something you might never even think about: the fuel duty freeze. This freeze has been saving drivers money for over 13 years. But right now, serious questions are being raised about whether it's coming to an end. And if it does, the cost won't just hit you at the pump, it'll ripple through the entire economy. So in this video, we're going to break down what the freeze is, how it started, why it might be scrapped, and most importantly, what it means for your wallet. What exactly is the fuel duty freeze? To really understand what's at stake, let's go back to 2011. At that time, petrol prices were climbing fast, and the government was under huge pressure to act. Drivers were furious. The cost of commuting was eating into paychecks, and small businesses were feeling the strain. So the Chancellor at the time made a bold move: freeze fuel duty. That meant no annual increases in the tax charged on every litre of petrol and diesel. Normally, fuel duty would rise each year, often in line with inflation, but since 2011, that's been on pause. And not only has it stayed frozen, but in 2022, when global oil prices spiked after the invasion of Ukraine, the government introduced an additional cut of 5 pence per litre. That was supposed to be temporary relief. But once it was in place, no one wanted to remove it. For the average driver, this freeze has been like an invisible discount. Over the years, it's saved thousands of pounds that would otherwise have gone straight to the taxman. Why is this back in the headlines now? So why are we talking about this again? Recently, reports surfaced that a senior civil servant tipped for a powerful role inside Number 10 is openly against the fuel duty freeze. If that person gains more influence, it could spell the end of the policy. And this isn't just speculation. Treasury officials have been grumbling about the freeze for years. From their perspective, it's an expensive promise that robs them of billions in potential revenue. And with the country facing tight budgets, some in government feel it's time to bite the bullet and raise duty again. For drivers, that could mean the first increase in over a decade. And once that happens, there's a good chance fuel duty will keep creeping up year after year. How much could it cost you? Let's put real numbers on this. Right now, fuel duty is set at 52.95 pence per litre, plus the 5p cut. If that freeze is lifted and the cut is scrapped, we're looking at nearly 58 pence per litre before VAT. For someone with a typical 50-litre tank, that's about £3 or £4 more every time they fill up. Doesn't sound huge. Multiply that by once a week, and suddenly you're looking at £150 to £200 more per year. And that's just for one car. Families with 2 cars, small businesses with vans, and lorry drivers will feel the pain even more. And don't forget, higher fuel costs don't stop at the petrol station. They push up transport costs, which push up supermarket prices, delivery charges, and even the cost of services. It's like throwing a stone in a pond. The ripples spread everywhere. The Treasury's dilemma. Now let's flip the coin. Why would the government even consider this? Because fuel duty is one of the Treasury's biggest sources of income. Each year, it brings in around 24 to 27 billion pounds. By keeping the freeze, they're leaving billions on the table. Since 2011, it's estimated the freeze has cost the government more than £100 billion in lost revenue. That's money that could have gone into schools, the NHS, or paying down debt. So from a purely financial perspective, ministers see the freeze as a luxury the country might not be able to afford anymore. But politically, raising it is toxic. No prime minister wants to be remembered as the one who hiked petrol duty. The environmental argument. Another reason critics want to end the freeze is environmental. The UK has legally binding net zero targets. To meet them, the government needs people to move away from petrol and diesel. Campaigners argue that keeping fuel duty frozen encourages car dependency. If petrol stayed expensive, more people might switch to electric cars, use public transport, or cut down on driving altogether. But here's the catch: not everyone has that choice. In London, with buses, trains, and the underground, ditching the car might be realistic, but in rural areas, where public transport is patchy or non-existent, people simply have no alternative. For them, higher duty doesn't reduce emissions, it just increases hardship. So again, the government is stuck between climate commitments and cost of living concerns. What experts are saying? Motoring groups like the RAC and the AA have come out swinging. They say scrapping the freeze would be devastating for families already struggling with bills. They also warn that fuel companies don't always pass on savings when wholesale prices fall, meaning drivers often get hit coming and going. The Road Haulage Association has warned that higher duty would push up the cost of running lorries, which would then raise prices across the economy. Think about your weekly shop, your Amazon deliveries, even construction materials. All of it depends on transport. On the other side, think tanks like the Institute for Fiscal Studies insist the freeze is unsustainable. They argue the government has effectively written off billions every year just to win political points with drivers. And sooner or later, that bill comes due. What do drivers think? But let's be real, the average driver doesn't care about treasury balance sheets or think tank forecasts. What matters is how much it costs to fill up the car. Surveys consistently show most drivers are strongly against any rise in fuel duty, and the public mood is pretty hostile. When fuel prices spiked in 2022, social media was flooded with outrage. Many accused the government and fuel companies of cash grabs. That kind of anger doesn't disappear easily. For families already juggling rising mortgages, higher food bills, and expensive energy, petrol is one more non-negotiable cost. You can cut back on luxuries, but you can't stop driving to work, taking kids to school, or visiting elderly relatives. That's why fuel duty increases are politically dangerous. They hit ordinary people where it hurts most, their daily lives. What happens next? So where does this leave us? The next big moment is the Chancellor's budget. That's when the decision will be made. Either extend the freeze again, or finally let duty rise. If the freeze continues, drivers get another year of relief. But if it ends, this will be the first increase in over a decade. And once that happens, it's hard to imagine it won't keep rising year after year. Opposition parties haven't been crystal clear either. Some have promised to keep the freeze, others are vague, leaving drivers uncertain about the future. For now, we're in a waiting game. But the signs are clear. Pressure is building inside government to end the freeze once and for all. Conclusion: the fuel duty freeze has been the invisible shield protecting UK drivers since 2011. It's saved families thousands of pounds and prevented inflation from climbing even higher. But it's also drained billions from government coffers and slowed progress on climate goals. Now, with political winds shifting, that shield could be coming down. If it does, the cost won't just hit you at the pump. It'll affect every corner of the economy. So here's the real question. Should the government keep protecting drivers? Or is it time to face reality and raise duty for the first time in 13 years? Because like it or not, your next fill-up might depend less on oil prices and more on one quiet decision inside number 10.